This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's time now to get a check on the markets. For that, we turn to Abigail Doolittle. So, Abigail, I read your note. Not a lot of movement I could find.
Not a lot of movement, indeed. At least for stocks, David. We have the S&P 500 up ever so slightly. That's true, too, for the Dow. If the S&P 500, if those bulls can come out more, maybe we'll get an all-time high. We have been on pace for a record high, so let's see. But where we do have big moves, David, the commodity complex, overall up almost 1%, but you have copper soaring, you have wheat and some of the other grain soaring. So that is a sign of the times in terms of the debate over whether or not this is healthy reflation and growth, or is there some sign of inflation here? As we were talking about last week, too many dollars chasing too few assets, sending some of these very illiquid assets up. And interesting, making it more interesting, oil down on the day. This, of course, sadly reflecting the worsening virus situation in India, thinking that demand will cut into it. So that's another divergence within the commodity complex and the risk. And I will note, David, the VIX, so the fear index is up. So stay tuned. There could be lots of volatility and fireworks ahead.
Yeah, and you'd think if there's a lot of concern about inflation, you see in the 10-year, which you're not really seeing, right?
Not really seeing it right now. Earlier, the 10-year yield had been up about 3 basis points, but relative to its high this year of 177, that's nothing. But as we've been talking about over the last week or two, I still think you're going to see 2%, 2.2% at some point. So again, stay tuned.
I'll hold you to it, Abigail. Okay, thank you so much to Abigail Doolittle for that report on the markets. Coming up, the politics of COVID in Europe with Nicholas Dungan of the Atlantic Council. This is Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Television and on radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, thank you. The U.S. Supreme Court will consider a major new Second Amendment dispute over whether the government must let most residents carry a handgun in public. The justices have agreed to hear an appeal by a New York gun rights group and two people who say the state is violating their constitutional rights by issuing carry licenses only to those who can show a special need for protection. The High Court hasn't issued a major gun rights decision in more than a decade. The European Commission is suing AstraZeneca, saying it hasn't honored the terms of its contract to deliver vaccines. Astra delivered just a quarter of the coronavirus vaccine doses the EU was expecting in the first quarter, and it's revised downward its projections for shipments in this quarter. The drug maker doesn't sell its shot for profit, but the prospect of a long legal battle with the EU raises the risk of litigation costs and damage payments. French President Emmanuel Macron is giving some hints about how the country will start to reopen some businesses. During a school visit today, just as students were going back to class after an extended vacation to tackle the virus, President Macron said restaurants would reopen gradually between May and the end of June. Cultural venues are set to reopen beginning in mid-May with limited occupancy rates. In India, coronavirus infections hit a record high for the fifth day in a row. The government reported more than 352,000 new cases. Overcrowded hospitals are turning away patients because they're running out of oxygen and beds. The United States and Europe have pledged to send aid to India. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg.
Thanks so much, Mark. I want to turn back to that story Mark just told us about President Macron trying to start to reopen the French economy. Europe overall is lagging behind the United States and Great Britain in its vaccination plans, and there may be some political prices to pay at some point down the road. To take us through them, we welcome now Nicholas Duncan. He is Atlantic Council Senior Fellow. Nick, it's always great to have you with us. First, give us the horse race. How are the various parts of Europe doing in getting people vaccinated?
The whole of Europe is around 22%, and actually, if you exclude the UK, which is way ahead, there's nobody who's seriously ahead in the horse race. And France is probably around the same, Germany around the same, the Netherlands. I'm speaking to you from The Hague today. So it's not as if somebody's at 50%. We don't have an Israel situation or a UK